A stray dog limps into a fire station carrying a bloody child's shoe in his mouth. What follows unravels a mystery no one saw coming. A race against time, a forgotten tragedy, and a hero no one expected. This isn't just a rescue. It's a story that will stay with you forever. It was a cold morning in late autumn when the fire station in Fair Grove first saw the dog. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. The firehouse, typically alive with chatter and movement, was still. The firefighters, wrapped in their usual morning fog of sleepiness and caffeine, had just begun their shift when the door creaked open, a small figure slipping through unnoticed at first. The creature was small, with matted fur that clung to its thin frame. Its body looked like it had been through countless storms, a testament to the harshness of the world outside the safety of a home. But it wasn't the dog's scruffy appearance that caught their attention. It was the thing he was dragging behind him. At first, the firefighters didn't notice it. But as the dog limped closer to the fire station's entrance, dragging something heavy and unmistakably wrong, Sam Davis was the first to speak up. His brow furrowed as he saw the thing that the dog was dragging, a bloodied shoe. The morning routine, filled with the low hum of radios and the clatter of boots, ground to an abrupt halt. "Sam, what the hell?" Carla's voice broke through the stillness as she stepped out from the office, her eyes widening at the sight of the dog and the shoe. It was unmistakable. This wasn't an ordinary shoe. It was a child's sneaker, torn, stained with fresh blood, and abandoned as if carelessly left behind in haste. The thought of a child's blood sent a cold shiver through the room. The dog was dragging it with surprising purpose, his movements slow and measured, as if carrying something important. His eyes darted nervously around the group of firefighters, now watching him from the doorway. Despite his obvious fatigue, despite the injuries that marred his body, the dog was alert, his posture rigid with caution. "Where'd he come from?" Sam muttered, his voice more to himself than anyone else. Carla moved closer to the animal, her heart quickening in her chest. The dog was no stray. He had a sense of purpose, a quiet dignity. He didn't beg for attention. He merely observed, his eyes flashing from person to person. Sam bent down carefully, his hand hovering just above the dog's head. There was no growl, no snarl. The dog's eyes met his with an odd, almost searching look. "Hey boy, you okay?" Sam asked, his voice softer now. The dog didn't answer in any way Sam expected. He just sat there, his tail curled tightly beneath his body, watching them. The bloodied shoe continued to lie between them, an unsettling reminder of something far worse than any of them could comprehend. Carla looked at the shoe. The weight of it seemed to press down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She bent down, reaching out for it. Sam, standing over her shoulder, watched closely. The shoe was soaked with fresh blood, darkened from the dirt and grime of the road. It was a child's shoe. There was no mistake about it. A small sneaker, once white but now stained a horrific shade of crimson. Carla could feel the bile rising in her throat. "Where did you find this boy?" she whispered, more to herself than to the dog. The question seemed absurd, but in that moment it was all she could think of. The dog didn't respond. He simply watched her, his eyes dark and unwavering. But Carla could sense something else, something she couldn't quite explain. It was as if the dog had brought the shoe for a reason. Like this wasn't a random event. It was deliberate. He hadn't just found it. He had sought it out. The firehouse fell silent as the firefighters stood, uncertain of what to do. The dog wasn't like any stray they had seen before, nor was the shoe. This wasn't just an abandoned pet or a random act of violence. Something was happening here, and the feeling in the pit of Carla's stomach told her they weren't prepared for what was about to unfold. "Should we call the police?" Sam asked, his voice tight with tension. Carla didn't answer immediately. She stood up, holding the shoe in her hand, and looked at the dog. He hadn't moved from his spot near the door. His eyes were still on her, waiting, patient. "I think we need to bring him inside first," she said quietly. "Let's get him some water and see if we can figure out where he came from." The dog followed her gaze, his eyes shifting from Sam to Carla and then back to the shoe, as though understanding every word without needing to hear it. The firefighters worked quickly, cautiously. They led the dog to the back of the station, where a small pen had been set up for the rare occasions when they had to care for animals. It wasn't a big space, but it was warm, and it offered a sense of safety, something that was in short supply for the injured animal. As the dog was placed inside, he didn't resist. Instead, he curled up in the corner of the pen, his head low, but his eyes still keenly aware of everything around him. He didn't bark or whine. He just rested, almost as if waiting for something or someone. His breathing was labored but steady. He was exhausted, and yet his posture remained strong. For a long moment, no one said anything. The firefighters stood around, unsure of how to proceed, staring at the animal that had appeared out of nowhere. The shoe lay forgotten on the ground, blood still fresh, but the sense of unease lingered. This wasn't just about a dog. This wasn't just about a stray that had wandered in with a tragic find. No, this was something bigger, something none of them could yet understand. They all sensed it. This dog wasn't here by chance. He had brought something with him, something that was about to change the course of their quiet town forever. The morning after the dog's arrival, Carla sat alone in the firehouse office, her fingers trembling slightly as she held a cup of coffee. She had been awake for hours, staring at the picture on the wall, the one of the crew during a rescue mission 3 years ago. It had been a quiet, uneventful year before the dog arrived, and now everything felt different. The shoe, the blood, the dog's knowing eyes. Sam had already called the local police, who had responded promptly, though they seemed just as confused and unsettled as the firefighters. No one knew where the shoe had come from, and there were no signs of a missing child report. Fairgrove, a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, had no unsolved disappearances. There were no strange incidents, just quiet, peaceful days filled with routine. And yet, something was wrong. The dog, whom they had now named Axel, was resting in the small pen behind the firehouse. His condition had deteriorated overnight. His coat, which had been dull and matted, now appeared even thinner, the ribs visible beneath the tattered fur. Despite being provided with food and water, Axel didn't seem interested in anything. He simply sat there, staring at the ground with the same intense gaze he had when he first arrived. Carla walked outside to check on him, her boots crunching on the frosty gravel as she approached the pen. Axel lifted his head slowly, eyes following her every movement, as if recognizing her approach. There was something about those eyes, intelligent, calculating. They were the eyes of a dog who had seen too much, experienced too much. "Hey, boy," Carla said softly, crouching beside him. She reached out, carefully stroking his head. Axel didn't flinch, but he didn't seem to welcome the affection either. He simply allowed her touch, his gaze still fixed on the distant horizon, as if waiting for something or someone. Carla had been through enough rescue missions to know when an animal had been through trauma. But Axel was different. There was an unsettling calm about him. It wasn't the kind of resignation that came from an animal that had given up. It was something deeper, more knowing. Axel had a purpose. He wasn't just a dog, a stray, or a victim of circumstance. He was something more. Behind her, Sam appeared at the door, his face tight with worry. "Any updates from the police?" he asked, his voice low. Carla shook her head, her eyes still on Axel. "No, nothing yet. They've checked all the missing persons reports from the past month. No kids have gone missing. No unusual activity." Carla stood up, her eyes still locked on Axel. "But this isn't just about the shoe. It's the way he brought it here. Like he's trying to tell us something." Sam followed her gaze. "You think this is connected to something bigger?" Carla hesitated. She wasn't sure, but her gut told her this wasn't just some random event. Axel had shown up for a reason. The shoe, the blood, it wasn't a coincidence. "I don't know, but I think we need to investigate further. There's something about this dog that doesn't sit right with me." Sam nodded in agreement. He had seen enough in his years of service to know that strange things often led to important discoveries. The dog wasn't just a stray. Axel had brought something with him. The question was, what? Over the next few days, the firehouse became a hub of activity. The police set up a formal investigation into the bloody shoe. Forensics took samples, and the firehouse received a visit from the local sheriff. The shoe was sent to the lab for analysis, but results didn't come back right away. All they had was the chilling presence of Axel, still lying motionless in the pen, his eyes never leaving the door. Carla and Sam took turns watching him, trying to decipher any clue the dog might offer. The other firefighters, while helpful, didn't know how to react. Some thought Axel was simply lost and confused, while others believed there was something darker at play. But no one could deny that the dog was different. He wasn't just some animal caught in a bad situation. 2 days after Axel's arrival, Carla received an unexpected visitor. Emily, a young girl from town who had recently gone through a traumatic experience of her own. She had been missing for 2 weeks during a spring camping trip, only to be found unharmed days later. It was a case that had rattled the community. Emily had wandered off during a hike, and no one could explain why or how she had ended up in such a dangerous part of the woods. The town had rallied behind her family, and the case had gone cold with no real answers. Emily's visit was not just a coincidence. She had heard about Axel, and her interest had been piqued. She had a way with animals, particularly dogs. She had grown up with them, and after her own ordeal, she had developed a special connection with them. She walked up to the pen, her eyes scanning the dog for any signs of recognition. "Hi, Axel," she said quietly, her voice soft and soothing. She knew what it was like to feel lost, to be somewhere you didn't understand. "It's okay, I'm here." Axel, to everyone's surprise, reacted to her voice. He lifted his head, his eyes locking with hers. There was a moment of recognition, a flicker of something deeper than just curiosity. It was almost as if Axel knew her. There was no other explanation for the connection they had. "I think he likes me," Emily said, a soft smile playing on her lips, but Carla saw the sadness in her eyes. Emily understood loss, perhaps better than anyone else in the town. The weight of her own experiences had shaped her, and now she saw something familiar in Axel's gaze. A dog who had seen too much, just like her. The two stood there for a while, just watching Axel, waiting for some sign that he would reveal more. But there was nothing. Axel simply watched, calm and steady, as though he were waiting for something. Waiting for them to understand. That night, as the firehouse settled into its quiet routine, Carla sat at her desk, staring at the picture of Emily from her rescue days. She couldn't shake the feeling that these two, Axel and Emily, were connected in some way. Something had brought them together, and it was more than just a coincidence. Whatever had happened to Emily in the woods, it was connected to Axel. And somehow, she was going to find out what. The next morning, fog hung low over Fairgrove. A heavy mist curled through the trees behind the fire station, casting a ghostly veil over the landscape. The kind of fog that made you second-guess what you were seeing. It felt like a sign, like the past was stirring again. Axel had moved during the night. Not far, just to the edge of the pen. But he hadn't been still. The crew discovered deep scratch marks along the gate, as if he'd been trying to get out. Not in panic, but in purpose. He'd paced back and forth until his paws were raw. When Carla arrived that morning, Axel stood the moment she appeared, tail stiff, eyes locked on hers with that same urgent weight. "He wants to go somewhere," Sam muttered as they watched him. "He's not running. He's leading." Carla opened the gate. Axel stepped out slowly but directly, brushing past her legs like a memory returning home. He didn't run. He walked, one deliberate step after another, through the dew-soaked grass behind the firehouse, toward the woods. "Where is he going?" one of the crew asked. Carla tightened her coat. "I don't know, but we're following him." They packed light. Carla, Sam, and Emily. Emily insisted on coming, and no one tried to stop her. She was part of this now, part of something none of them could yet name. She carried a small sketch pad under her arm. Axel glanced at her only once, then pressed forward into the trees. The forest behind the firehouse wasn't deep, but it connected to old trails long forgotten by most of the town. Paths once used by hunters and hikers before being swallowed by time and silence. The farther they walked, the more overgrown the trail became, like nature trying to hide something. For nearly an hour, Axel led them, never looking back, always forward, his nose low to the ground, ears perked. Occasionally he would stop, sniff the air, then change direction slightly, like following a scent only he could detect. Eventually they reached a clearing. Dead leaves carpeted the ground, and broken branches lay scattered like bones. In the middle stood a rusted metal sign, its paint long faded. Carla brushed off the surface. "No trespassing. County Land Reclamation Project." "I haven't seen this place in years," Sam murmured. "Used to be some kind of shelter out here. Closed down ages ago." Axel sat down in front of the sign, his gaze locked on the trees just beyond. Carla moved past him, heart pounding. The air felt heavier here. Charged. Like something had happened. Something that didn't want to be remembered. They pushed forward and found it. What was left of a small building, half collapsed, vines twisting through the shattered wood. The roof had caved in long ago. The windows were broken, the door missing. Axel padded softly into the ruin, tail low but steady. Inside, the air smelled of mold, rust, and something else. Something old and forgotten. Carla stepped over a fallen beam, her flashlight beam dancing across the floor. Then she saw it. Scratched into the wall, just above a rotted mattress, were the faint outlines of letters. Emily moved closer, brushing off the dirt, her breath caught. "Help me." Underneath it, something even more chilling, faint drawings, a child's hand, a son, a dog. "It's her," Emily whispered, voice breaking. "The girl from the shoe." No one spoke. The silence was louder than words. Sam exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for years. Then Axel barked, a single sharp sound. He was standing at the back of the building, paw raised against a fallen shelf. Carla moved quickly, pulling it aside. Beneath it, half buried in debris, was a small cloth bag. Inside, another child's shoe, and beneath that, a photograph. A little girl, about 9, smiling with a dog beside her. A different dog. Lighter fur, but the same kind of eyes. Emily traced the girl's face with her finger. "Who was she?" They brought everything back to the station. By that evening, the lab had results. The blood on the shoe matched a child named Mia Connolly, reported missing nearly 6 years ago. But the report had never made it to local authorities. She'd been visiting relatives in another county when she vanished during a camping trip. The family had moved shortly after. The connection was missed, forgotten. Until now. Sam stared at the photo. If this is her, then she must have been here, in that shelter. But why was she never found? Emily asked. Why didn't anyone come looking? Carla looked at Axel, who now lay curled beside the fire truck, eyes open, watching. Because no one knew where to look, Carla said quietly. Except him. In the following days, everything began to unravel. Police reopened the case. They excavated the site. Forensics teams scoured every inch. Beneath the floorboards, they found more evidence: bits of clothing, children's drawings, even a small rusted nameplate. Walter's Retreat. Walter Jennings, a man with a history of abuse who had once run a rehabilitation program for troubled youth. Shut down after allegations surfaced, but no charges were ever filed. He vanished soon after the program closed, and now Axel had led them straight to it. More pieces came together: Mia's disappearance, the cover-up, the silence that followed. The town began to whisper, and then they began to talk. Loudly, demanding answers, demanding justice. But amid the chaos, there was one thing no one could explain: how a stray dog had known where to go, what to find, and how to bring the truth back with him. Carla stood one evening at the pen, watching Axel sleep. She thought about how he arrived, with a shoe, just one, a message, a memory, a plea. You remembered, she whispered, when no one else did. That night, Emily left a drawing on the wall of the firehouse, a girl and a dog under the trees, and above them, the words, "Some stories wait to be told, some just need to be followed." Axel's eyes glinted in the fading light, and somewhere deep in the woods, the wind stirred the trees like a secret finally breaking free. For weeks after the rescue, the firehouse stayed quiet. The news had spread. A stray dog had found a missing girl and led rescuers straight to her. Local stations ran the story. Some called it a miracle. But inside the station walls, it wasn't just a headline. It was personal. Emily came often, walking a little taller now. Her laughter returned, cautious at first, but warmer with each visit. She'd sit beside Axel, her hand resting gently on his back. And he, as always, stayed close. Not watching over her, watching with her, as though every moment was part of a promise he hadn't broken. Her parents once brought a framed drawing she'd made, a dog standing by a fire truck beneath the words, "He knew when someone was lying. He knew when the wind carried danger. When he looked at you, you told the truth without meaning to." Axel sniffed the frame, and then laid his head on Emily's lap. "He knows it's about him," Carla whispered. Emily smiled. "It always is." But stories don't end just because the danger passes. Some truths arrive late. One rainy afternoon, a man came to the station. His jacket was old, the patch on the sleeve faded. Animal Control, County Division. His name was Doug. His eyes were tired, like someone who'd once known something beautiful and lost it. "I was there," he said quietly. "The night he broke out. 5 years ago." Carla and Sam exchanged glances. "You mean Axel?" Sam asked. Doug nodded. "We'd brought him in after a domestic call. Cabin in the woods. Owner got violent. Dog wouldn't leave the girl's side." He paused. "She screamed when we took him." Carla's hand instinctively touched Axel's collar. Doug looked down. "That night he broke the fence. I chased him for 3 blocks. Thought he was just scared. Figured he'd run, get hit, get lost." He looked over to where Axel was sleeping peacefully on the rug, tail flicking with a dream. I didn't think a dog could carry that kind of pain, or that kind of mission. You were wrong, Carla said softly. Doug nodded, his voice breaking. But I think he forgives me. Later that night, Carla sat outside the firehouse. The sky above was clean and cold, scattered with stars. She sipped her tea slowly, Axel curled beside her, one paw draped across her boot. You remembered, she whispered. You never gave up. Axel didn't lift his head, just let out a slow breath, one of those deep, knowing sighs that said everything without sound. The days that followed felt like a quiet exhale. Axel still rose before dawn, still greeted each crew member with a nudge or a low tail wag. But his pace was slower now, his eyes softer. Some days he just sat by the tree line and stared into the woods. Not with fear, with stillness, as if what once haunted him had finally stopped chasing. Then one morning, Carla found a note on the firehouse bench, folded carefully, written in a child's hand. No envelope, just a drawing of a girl and a dog holding hands under a sky full of stars. It read, Dear Axel, if you ever have to leave, that's okay. I'll remember. Just like you did. Love, Emily. Carla sat with it in her lap for a long time. Axel lay under the bench, eyes half shut, tail gently tapping the ground. She reached down, fingers brushing his collar. She's ready, she whispered. He didn't move, but she knew he'd heard her. The trees rustled gently, not with warning, with peace. The first snowfall came early that year. Light, delicate flakes drifted over the firehouse roof as if the sky itself was exhaling gently. But inside, something was different. Axel didn't get up with the sunrise. He didn't walk to the tree line, didn't greet the crew, didn't nudge Carla's hand for his usual morning scratch behind the ears. He simply stayed curled in his bed near the fire truck. Warm, still, peaceful. The vet had warned them. Dogs like Axel, they carried more than physical scars. Some, the vet said, knew when their work was done. They didn't fade. They chose their moment. Carla knelt beside him, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Steady, but slow. She didn't speak, not yet. Neither did Axel, but the silence between them was full of memory. That afternoon, Sam, Carla, and Emily gathered around him. Emily wore a red scarf, the same one Axel had once tugged playfully on a walk in early spring. She sat cross-legged beside him and gently laid a small box in front of his paws. Inside, her drawing, folded neatly. It's yours now, she whispered. Axel blinked slowly. His tail thumped once against the floor. Then, a breath. Long, slow, deep. And he was gone. No cry, no fear, just a quiet goodbye. The firehouse was silent that evening. No sirens, no radio chatter, just the sound of snowfall tapping gently on windows. The town mourned like they'd lost one of their own, because they had. Candles were lit outside the station. Children left dog treats in small piles near the door. Some brought hand-drawn pictures. Others, notes that simply said, "Thank you." One family left a child's muddy sneaker. Symbolic, tear-stained, precious. At sunset, Carla climbed the hill behind the woods, the same hill they'd once followed Axel through, over broken branches, across forgotten paths. Beneath a tall pine tree, they laid him to rest. No marble stone, just a plaque carved into the bark. Axel, the one who remembered, the one who returned. But even then, his story wasn't done. That spring, the town cleared a section of those woods, once thick with fear, and built something new. A park, small but thoughtful. At its center, a winding trail lined with quiet pines. They named it Memory Grove. And the trail? Axel's path. At the heart of the grove, beneath the same pine that stood watch over his final rest, they placed a stone bench. People came often, some to sit and think, others to talk to someone they couldn't see. Emily visited most, sometimes with crayons, sometimes with questions, always with love. And every now and then, she'd glance toward the tree line and smile, because she remembered. Weeks later, Carla found a sealed envelope in her mailbox. No return address, just a small paw print sticker on the seal. Inside, a letter from the mayor's office. Alongside it, a certificate. Posthumous recognition of valor, awarded to Axel for extraordinary service in the protection of life, the recovery of truth, and unwavering loyalty to those who needed it most. Carla framed it beside his collar and his tag. Every morning before she left the station, she'd glance at it and whisper the same 3 words. "Thank you, Axel." Because sometimes, the greatest rescues don't happen in flames or sirens or storm. They happen in silence, in the quiet corners where guilt hides, in the places pain won't speak. Axel didn't just find people in the woods. He found them in their wounds. He brought them home, not just in body, but in heart. And though he is gone, his trail remains, etched not just into soil and plaque, but into memory. He didn't need words. He remembered. And now, so will we.